So welcome everyone. This is the third webinar on specialty tracks and on fellowships at New York Presbyterian Queens. We're going to talk about some of the specialty tracks that are available here at New York Presbyterian Queens, as well as the fellowships. I'm Sumitra Wood. I'm one of the APDs here. So welcome everyone who joined us. And so right now I'm going to just start with a little bit of an overview of the specialty tracks. We have a lot of specialty tracks. We have simulation, education, sports medicine, global health, pediatric emergency medicine, critical care, ultrasound, and administration. And right now we have several faculty who are in charge of the specialty tracks. Dr. Torres on my screen, the left corner, is critical care. Dr. Brady is pediatric emergency medicine. Right below, Dr. Yoneda is education in the bottom corner. And then right below me is Dr. Naklani, who's simulation. You're muted.
Hi.
Yeah, and then Dr. Huang is sports medicine at the very bottom right now. And then when other people shuffle forward, Greco is here. He's not on video screen, but
here. I can go on a video, but it might just be my car. Let me see.
The disembodied voice of Dr. Greco is ultrasound, our ultrasound specialty track. So starting, I'm not sure who wants to take the lead. Maybe starting with Dr. Torres, if you don't mind talking and driving, since you're an excellent multitasker. Telling us a little bit about your specialty track.
You hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
You hear me? All right. So I'm not critical care trained. I'm a PGY 20. I've made many mistakes and been to many M&Ms, mine and others. So I use my knowledge base to improve the education of the residents. I'm not going to fellowship anytime soon, unless I get rid of my mortgage, my 2 car payments, and my kids and my wife, but that's not happening. So I'll be educating from experience and from what I read. My partner in crime is my younger part, I guess my adopted nephew from another mother, Andrew Moonian, who should be on very soon. He gives a different flavor. We both synergistically try to educate our residents how to be resuscitationists. Some call them Baffords. I don't give you any of that title. I just want you to be a good doctor. So before COVID times, we'd have monthly meetings and some libations, of course, afterwards with eating meats or vegan options. But COVID times, I have to resort to now maybe Zooming once a month on topics, or invites to the backyard and grilling meat and drinking sangria, like some of us are going to do later on. I hope that you guys come here and you will be educated wisely and maybe a little harshly by Dr. Torres and whoever believes in tough love. But we're all about the patients, not about our egos. So any questions?
Any questions so far from the audience about critical care track?
It looks like Moonian signed on now.
Yeah, Moonian can also describe his critical care experience.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great.
And he's the other, yeah, and he's the ultrasound part. Like, I only do ultrasound because I was taught it, but he actually did a fellowship, so he actually knows what he's talking about with ultrasound. I just copy what he says or learn from what he does.
Hey guys, my name is Andrew Moonian. I am part of the critical care team, also part of the ultrasound department. Me and Dr. Torres pretty much, lead the extracurricular critical care stuff. I'm also in charge of the critical care curriculum as part of our weekly conference. We do joint things with the ICU, but you're gonna get a lot of that stuff on site. We pretty much, I'm not sure what Dr. Torres covered, but we reach up every month a pseudo social gathering, and we talk about current topics in an open, informal, non-threatening environment, because sometimes things can get a little heated on shift. But as Tora said, it's all love in this family here. But yeah, I mean, we're very approachable. Everyone has our numbers. We also have a little side group chat that is 24/7. I work night shifts, Torres works night shift, and we never sleep. So we are open and available for everybody.
We also, once you're part of our research track, once family, always family. So we have alumni who text us about cases during shift about what they should do. And they're not going to be crazy enough to say, I texted Torres and he told me this, but it's all about the patient, regardless it's ours or someone else's. We're all about like trying to advance care. And some of the stuff we talk about is a little bit on the edge, not crazy stuff, but when there's literature, we actually think about, are we going to adopt this in our practice, or are we going to wait for Tintinelli to write it in their books in 5 years? So we like to challenge things, but it's all about the patient and increased survivability, less death notes, less malpractice, and that's it.
Okay, great. That was a great overview. I'm going to switch to, I don't know who wants to go next. Anika, you're on my other side, so I'll let you speak.
Okay. I'm talking about SimTrack, correct?
Yeah, SimTrack.
Okay, so hi, how are you? My name's Anika. I'm in charge of mostly resident education as it pertains to simulation department. I mean, I think as most medical students and residents know that it's an integral part of education. So we use simulation to learn and to teach via cases, whether they're bread and butter or zebras, and via models, task trainers. So the SimTrack specifically, it kind of originated with a couple residents who had a strong interest in developing low-cost task trainers, and it's kind of grown into that is like the favorite thing that residents do. So anytime someone has an idea for a model to do a high stakes procedure, we help them develop them. So for one of the first residents was Callie, and she kind of started this SimTrack where we come in once every, we don't meet as much as the recess team meets, but maybe every couple months, and we'll do a day where we'll develop we'll have an idea, and then we'll develop the task trainer. So that's kind of how this started, but it's actually so much more. We do a simulation journal club. We haven't done a physical one in some time, so a lot of times it's all virtual. Dr. Chen will send an article, we'll read it, and it'll be like a thread that's discussed via email. But we are transitioning more in person or via Zoom, so that we can actually have like full discussions. As you know, it's a huge part of our residency and our education with small groups. We have morning sim and we have one-to-one. So if there's any interest, particularly in the education part, we do offer like mentorship and training in that end. We also have debriefing class. One of the biggest things, like one of our highlights, is we do once a year a conference, IMSH. I know with COVID times, I don't know how likely that's going to happen again this year, but IMSH is a big international simulation conference that is multidisciplinary. And should you have a particular idea or a task trainer that you develop, we usually submit it, and we've had a lot of success. We submitted 10 projects this year, and if you are accepted, then we can take you to the conference if there is a physical conference. In addition, we also do AHA training as well. So if there's any interest in becoming an instructor, ACLS, BLS, PALS, we are a site, and we always have classes. More participants than we do instructors, unfortunately, but we're always trying to do more. And that's basically it.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so now I'll go to Dr. Yoneda talking about the education track.
Hi, guys. Thank you for joining us. I'm excited to be here to share a little bit of information about our academic track. And I guess I can speak also about our medical education fellowship, kind of in the same, now that I have the floor. The reason I kind of tie them together is because your academic faculty, that includes your APDs, myself, Sumintra Wood, Marvin Mempin, your medical education clerkship director. Some of you who are rotating with us will know Dr. Louie, Dr. Parikh, our program director, and our medical education fellows. This year we have Sunny Elegandala, are all part of the academic track. So we also try to do regular meetings. I will say we were probably aiming for monthly or every other month. But that has kind of gone by the wayside, unfortunately, with COVID, but we're trying to start up full force again. The purpose of the meetings is to sit down. A lot of times we'll go somewhere, have a drink, have a meal, small powwow to kind of discuss different elements of education within the residency program. And that might be amongst the residents. It might have to do with our medical students. And I feel like Dr. Louie, our clerkship director, and the team have really been able to revamp the clerkship over the last few years. It went from, being kind of like standard, you expect to do suturing and splinting and those types of labs, but I feel like we kind of listen to the students and we want to give them what they want. And that means, critical care sessions with our critical care gurus, more procedure labs, just we have our ear to the streets, and we want to try to provide that educational experience. I think that stemmed from understanding that we learn way differently than we did a few years ago, 10 years ago, than when in the 1970s when emergency medicine started off as a residency program. So we just want to kind of gear up and join the modern world. And I feel like emergency medicine is so perfect compared to like other disciplines, that we really embrace what we have now with technology. We spread information differently. We can share with others our innovations, engage with the community in a different way. And that really shapes how we learn. So we try to focus in on those types of innovations. We try to produce some projects and research we can discuss. And I feel like it's a nice opportunity to have mentors within the academic field to bounce ideas off of for your future direction. To speak a little bit about the Medical Education Fellowship, we're pretty brand spanking new. We were established in 2019, so we graduated our first fellow last year, and the vision was for a 1 to 2 year guided mentorship experience to kind of give you like a deep dive into academic emergency medicine. So you basically function as a kind of like a member of our core faculty, like a mini member, but like super important tasks. I think that from a fellow perspective, you're closer to the residents in a way that other core faculty can't be. And it's a great opportunity to work with the residents, especially those that might be struggling, that have questions about their future, to gain their reverence and respect and be able to be the one that gives them feedback in a way that is helpful to them. So I think that we have had a great 1.5 years so far. We're hoping to keep that momentum going. We're always interested to meet with and speak to anyone who's really very dedicated to wanting to be the best teacher that they can be. And I feel like we want to make great teachers and great leaders in the community, and that's our focus.
That was awesome. All right, any questions from the audience right now?
Feel free to type them into the chat box if you prefer to communicate that way. If you're a little shy, that's okay too.
Type any questions in, I'll relay it to the speakers. And now we'll move on to Victor, Dr. Wong, with sports medicine, one of our newest tracks that we offer, which is really exciting because I barely had any sports medicine where I trained, only a little bit.
Hi guys, can you hear me well?
Yep. There you go.
All right. So yes, I graduated from an emergency medicine residency, and then I did a one-year fellowship in sports. So I have a high interest in all these orthopedic and sports medicine cases that we see in the ED. We do see a lot in our ED, and our ED is very busy. We have a main side and also an ED south side, which is our urgent care or fast track. So you guys, if you guys choose us as a residency, you guys will be rotating through there every month, a couple shifts. And that's where I work a lot. We get to do procedures, a lot of splinting, a lot of fracture reductions, arthrocentesis, which means to aspirate fluid out of a joint. And you'll get a good experience with orthopedics, something that a lot of people don't get a lot because a lot of the academic programs are at tertiary hospitals. And it's very easy to consult with orthopedics, and they do come down and they perform the procedure. But something that would really benefit for especially residents that want to get more hands-on, or if they end up working in the community, it really helps to have experience with these types of procedures, because in the community, it's going to be very tough to get the orthopedic attending to come down to do a fracture reduction or a dislocation reduction. So these things are skills that I'm trying to bring out into our residents. And throughout this year, we've seen significant growth, and I'm very happy to see. We'll have conferences, didactics, and workshops where we'll practice this on each other. And then in the hopes of getting our procedural skills better in person. I won't speak about ultrasound too much, but I am an avid practitioner of musculoskeletal ultrasound. I use that a lot in my practice. It's a very quick tool that you can use right at the bedside to diagnose a lot of bony and soft tissue injuries. The tract is getting started this semester, so I don't have a lot of real life experience with that yet that I can partake, but my goals are to promote increased knowledge about sports medicine, orthopedics, both on the non-operative and operative side. We'll be discussing journal articles, we'll be going over procedures, and we'll also be having a group chat that's going to be having direct access to each other, so we can go over images, x-ray findings, and just overall orthopedic management for cases that we see in the ED. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, and then now, of course, our amazing pediatric emergency medicine track, Dr. Brady. Please tell me more about it.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Maybe a little bit louder. How are you guys doing?
I'll get closer to the microphone. Is that better?
I think so, yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay. So our pediatric emergency medicine track has always seemed to attract the residents who are most nervous about pediatrics. Now, granted, all EM residents are nervous about when they finish residency and how comfortable are they going to be taking care of pediatric patients on their own. So for the last couple of years, we've tried to focus on what can we do to make the EM residents more comfortable for that time when they are out on their own. And I think because so much of emergency medicine is following protocols, and you guys have all these heart scores and things that you follow, that makes it easier for you to kind of like, not necessarily be on autopilot, but just kind of like know exactly what to do and not have to think so much about it. We don't have that in pediatric emergency medicine so much. And now that, you know, COVID has come and our census has dropped, obviously, in the pediatric ER tremendously, I think residents are even more nervous. So we're trying to figure out ways to get them more exposure to pediatric cases, which may be through stimulation and that kind of stuff, but also we're having instances and hours where the adult emergency medicine providers are responsible for the pediatric patients, and they feel uncomfortable with that. So I really want to focus this year on coming up with how to manage certain pediatric emergencies and having, you know, very specific guidelines so that it's kind of just an easy 1, 2, 3, not having to think so much and be so nervous about it, and then afterwards being able to think about what did we do, what went well, what didn't go well, kind of thing.
That sounds awesome. I kind of just like listening to you talk about the track. I'm like, why didn't I do pediatric EM as a track? It does get scarier when you're in attending, and especially if you don't work in a major pediatric center where you have, like if you worked in a community hospital and you were like the only one, like it's good to know really what to do when you have sick pediatric patients. Okay, so I think Greco as the disembodied voice might be gone right now. I don't see him. Greco might be trying to log back on in another form, I imagine. Okay, so I think that was the last one that we had of the tracks. So I think while we're waiting for Dr. Greco to come back, we will switch a little bit gears to fellowship a little bit. And I was wondering, I have a couple of questions prepared. For the people who did fellowships, what motivated you? I know some people have touched on this a little bit when they were talking about just the tracks in general, but what motivated you to kind of like do the time commitment, do the extra year or two to do a fellowship? And did you find anything in the process of doing fellowship that was different than what you were initially expecting or initially anticipating? Like something that was like a surprise, either bonus or just like something unusual that you realized happened for you during the process of doing a fellowship? We can start with, I don't know, Nika, do you want to go?
So actually, this question is really good because I heard about fellowship. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I think
I wasn't sure about starting or doing a fellowship when I graduated. In fact, I think I needed probably a little more time to just kind of work on my confidence. And so I was approached initially, or I had approached Dr. Shin and had asked, what would be great. I really wanted to work on my critical care skills. And perhaps I could have thought of a critical care fellowship or even the recess fellowship. But then we discussed perhaps focusing, using SIM to focus on enhancing my knowledge and brushing that part of my medical knowledge up through teaching. And I did not want to teach. So I guess the surprising part, not the surprising, I knew I had to. I knew that it was part of the fellowship, of course. But the surprising part is that I didn't realize that I liked it so much. And now it's kind of a big chunk of what I do. So just as like simulation kind of was born out of the education fellowship or department, I have now feel like this is now what I like to do and what I am doing. So I went in for a reason, and now I've come out with it with a different reason. I still don't like to do the administrative stuff, though. So that's still true.
I sat in on one of Anika's sessions today, and I think that you found the groove. You are amazing. She's an amazing educator, so I just wanted to say.
Aw, thank you.
And then I guess back to Dr. Kwong. So you did touch on this a little bit, but was there anything that kind of surprised you going through a sports medicine fellowship that you didn't necessarily expect?
So I didn't expect to like outpatient medicine as much. I chose emergency medicine because I couldn't stand the clinic, especially my experience with certain clinics. I would often fall asleep in the midst of the attending going in to talk to the patient I just interviewed. So I knew certain, I'm not going to mention which specialty, but certain specialties just weren't for me. And I fell in love with the ED, doing everything, having all the consult services, all the abilities to do procedures right there in the emergency department, taking care of a patient who's critically ill. I guess what surprised me was after 3 years of being solely in the ED, I fell back in love with outpatient medicine, being able to make changes, to be able to fix a patient right then and there in the office. So that's something that I found out that I loved again. So that was a kind of a surprise for me. Okay. And I think Jeff is back now, so he can talk about the ultrasound track.
Oh yeah, Jeff, can you do a combo ultrasound track and ultrasound fellowship sort of like introduction, basically. Like, what do you like to do, or what do you want to do with the ultrasound track? And then, you know, similarly, why do an ultrasound fellowship? What was your experience like doing your ultrasound fellowship?
Yeah, sure. Sorry about that, guys. I got home and then lost service. But I'm Jeff Greco. I'm the emergency ultrasound director. I'm one of the ultrasound and core faculty. Our department, our division's been growing a lot recently over the past 2 years or so. Right now, our faculty includes Dr. Moonian, who you already met, Hannah Park, Poonam Desai. So there are 4 attendings right now. We currently have 2 ultrasound fellows, Nate Zerder and Jay Franco, who are a few months into their 1-year ultrasound fellowship currently. So as far as the track goes, the track is designed for residents that have a little bit more of an interest in point of care ultrasound, that want to kind of sharpen their skills, not only on the core studies that everyone should be competent in by the time they graduate residency, but some of the more advanced stuff too, and maybe some of the more recently published techniques, because there are always new techniques coming out every year that we'll explore when we meet with journal club. So it's kind of a combo track meeting / journal club about every 2 months, and ideally in person at a restaurant or bar, but that's going to be COVID dependent, kind of everyone said it. I hope by the time you guys are residents that you know, the restrictions are not the way they are now, that we've made some progress in that area. But yeah, we had a few meetings last year before the pandemic really came about. Other things that the ultrasound track residents might do or have interest in. So whenever we develop a new research project, we like to have residents on it. So we'll typically go to the ultrasound track residents first and offer it if it's attending faculty developed project or fellow developed project. We've been trying to pick up our ultrasound or our POCUS research now that we have 2 fellows. And you know, it's designed that we would reach out to ultrasound track residents. The other things that they're involved in, every year at SAM, they have Sono games. At least when they're in person. I don't know how they're going to do that virtually. I guess they still could. And at least the first year when I was here that we did it, obviously last year was canceled. We liked to pick residents that were involved in the track. We also did Asana Wars at Northwell. One of the nearby programs is like a New York City or surrounding region Asana Wars that we did actually right before COVID really went full force in the very beginning of March, pretty much right before everything shut down. So that's kind of what the track is involved with. Like I said, our division's definitely growing. We're probably going to have at least 1, hopefully 2 new ultrasound faculty come July. And then as far as the fellowship, it's a 1-year fellowship. It's not currently ACGME accredited. So that means that you essentially work part-time as an attending at our site, and almost like a core faculty member, you're expected to be heavily involved in the residency with conference and tape review. So if you're a resident here, you get a lot of one-on-one time and a lot of didactic time in ultrasound with our fellows, with our other ultrasound faculty. I don't know, do you want me to go much more into the fellowship stuff or?
Actually, the question I've been asking people was, and we have two ultrasound fellowship trained faculty, so I'm gonna pit you guys against each other. What did each of you find was like a surprising or like unexpected thing that that happened for you in fellowship? Either something that you learned about yourself that you didn't expect, or like something that you was like an unexpected benefit of doing the fellowship. Like was it everything you thought it was going to be? Was there something that was even better? Would you do it again?
I think to answer your last question, I think I would definitely do it again. I mean, I know with our residents today, we kind of had this talk about fellowships, and we just talked about our individual fellowship. I think it's added a lot, both career-wise in terms of career advancement, being able to go to a place and kind of help grow a program. And also wellness too, to try and avoid burnout. I think no matter what you do as an emergency physician, I think you need something else besides working clinical shifts, because our shifts are maybe not the same as some other specialties. They're very physically and mentally challenging. You're pretty much going nonstop. So I definitely have no regrets about doing the fellowship. And in terms of stuff I was surprised about during the actual fellowship, I guess there was so much more involved in the ultrasound that I didn't really pick up as a resident in terms of you do your core kind of content and scans, but there's so much more when it comes to like critical care, which I'm sure, Mooney has the same feelings. And yeah, I'd say that.
Dr. Moonian?
Let me just unmute myself. So I did my ultrasound fellowship here back in 2015. And I think that, I've had a pretty solid foundation residency with training, but I trained in Detroit, and despite being in a different part of the country, it's a different practice environment, a different population, and you'll notice that as you go from hospital to hospital, especially in different geographical regions, people practice differently, and the standards of care are also altered. So I felt that the ultrasound fellowship, being more of like an adjunct fellowship as opposed to something like, critical care or, toxicology, or even pediatrics, it was one of those fellowships that helped you, take your time to become an attending, which I think is a crucial part in your learning. Your learning doesn't stop in residency, and the learning curve as a brand new attending is very steep. There's a lot of things that are going on, including taking your boards, oral and written, prepping for that, learning to be an attending. So the ultrasound fellowship allowed me to kind of do a fellowship part-time or work part-time and do both at once without feeling overwhelmed by one. So I think that was probably the biggest thing that I didn't really expect, but definitely helped me a lot. And emergency medicine, looking at today, it's completely changed from when I graduated. And I graduated only 5-6 years ago. And when I say what's changed about it is really like the career, and it's becoming more and more competitive, and you really need to add something to your CV and make yourself different to stand out against everybody else, because it is a highly sought after specialty, and there are many reasons for that. And I think this is just something else that you can add to your armamentarium, and be a better candidate for whatever endeavors you have in the future.
That was very well said. I totally agree. We have a very temporary special guest here as our current education fellow, Sunny. I'm not going to say your name right, Ilagandola. And he's working right now. But Sunny, I don't know if you want to just be voice and video, but if you could tell us a little bit about your experience. You're an education fellow right now, but like why you decided to do that, what you love about it, and anything new or unexpected that you weren't anticipating going into the fellowship that you've learned, in the process of now being in your second year of fellowship. I don't hear Sunny. I see that he's here, but I don't hear him.
He may.
Might have gotten a bat phone call.
Yeah.
A notification or something like that.
Okay, so I'll let Sunny manifest maybe some other.
Back. That was kind of him to try to join.
Yeah, it was nice of him to try. Dr. Brady, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about sort of like the decision for PEM. And oh wait, Sunny's disembodied head has now appeared. Sunny, did you hear anything I said?
Sunny, are you there?
It says he's connecting to audio now.
Okay. But now he's on mute.
We have to unmute him.
I'm better.
In the recess room.
Sunny.
No, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Good.
Probably heard nothing.
I didn't have this on my phone before.
So Sunny, if you could tell us a little bit about your decision to go into medical education, to do a 2-year fellowship, and anything like that you've learned in the process, or like kind of like unexpected that you learned by going through now your 2nd year of fellowship.
Yeah, sure. Did Dr. Yanetta already had her little spiel?
Spoke about the education track and the education fellowship in broad strokes. I kind of want to know, like, on a Sunny level, how you feel it is.
Gotcha. Yeah. So for those I haven't met, my name is Sunny Elegandala. I'm a 2nd year medical education fellow here. I did my medical school at VCU in Richmond, Virginia, and then did residency at UT Houston in Houston, Texas. So I've kind of been bouncing around, and the reason for that is I just kind of have always, I never was tied to a location for any particular reason, and I've just gone wherever I felt like the best next training for me would be, or the best next opportunity would be. And luckily that's put me in a lot of really cool cities over time. My decision to go into education or academics as a whole came from, I did, during my 2nd year, we were a 3-year residency program, and during my 2nd year I did an education elective around this time of year, actually, during like September time. And so I got to work with a lot of students while I was in the ED, and our education shifts were basically you acted as like a pretending for the medical students, and you would just cherry pick patients with either interesting cases or who needed to have procedures done. And I really loved that experience of getting to work students and junior residents through complicated medical cases, complicated trauma cases. We were a very high acuity site, working them through procedures, which I think students are always like super eager to get to. And that made me realize that I would not be as happy with my career long-term, like in 20, 30 years, if I lost that aspect of emergency medicine, because I think that's a huge part of emergency medicine, is like just walking in with no idea of what's going on with the patient, and putting the pieces together, and then doing whatever procedures need to be done, and doing all of that in sort of a high intensity, high stress situation. And that's what made me want to go into academics in general. And so then I started looking at like what the options were. And the truth of the matter is, for the vast majority of major academic institutions, it's really hard to become academic faculty without having done without either being trained there or having fellowship training, for the most part. I'm not saying it's impossible. There are people who go to the community for a year or 2 and then come back, but you have to really show your dedication somehow through doing some other educational program, or like maybe you have an educational blog or something. Like, the best example I would have probably is the guy who, I think his name is Ken Milne or something, the guy who does Skeptic's Guide to Emergency Medicine. He's not primarily a academic emergency physician, but he does a ton of obviously academic emergency medicine stuff. So that's where a lot of that comes from. For me, it was like 2 things. Number one, I needed, I wasn't as confident in my ability to teach yet. So I wanted a little bit of time to get a little bit better at learning how to teach junior residents and learning how to teach students, and develop some of those skills for myself. Because I was realizing that after a 3-year program, you still haven't learned all of emergency medicine. And there was a little bit of discomfort with going straight into practice and having to start teaching that. And so that was part of my reason to go into education fellowship. And then the other part was, I knew that I wanted to be in leadership at some point, like be an APD, a clerkship director, maybe a program director many years down the road. And so I wanted to get a better idea of what went on behind the scenes, and how to develop curriculum, how to do all the administrative stuff like doing biannual evaluations and setting milestones and all these other nuts and bolts that go into being an academic fellow. And so that was a huge part of it. And then I interviewed, in 4 or 5 places, and I absolutely loved the group that we have here. Dr. Wood wasn't here yet, but Dr. Yoneda and Dr. Parikh and Dr. Mempin and Dr. Louis and everyone who was here, it really felt like being a part of a family. And it was also like a pretty high acuity site. There's a ton of diversity, and that's why I chose NYPQ out of all the places that I interviewed at. And with that being an Envision site, we do get kind of like, it's non-ACGME accredited, so you do get a little bit of a salary boost, which is nice. And they also have been helping me out with tuition for my master's program. I'm doing a master's in academic and clinical medicine, which is like it's like a master's in education, but a very medical tilt on it. Every assignment project that we do has to do specifically with medical education for either students or residents. And all the research projects that we do have a medical tilt on them. It's like, how would you do clinical research, or how would you translate bench research to clinical practice? And it's been a really good experience. So it certainly is a good bit of work to do a 2-year fellowship with a master's, but if you envision yourself in leadership at any point down the road in academics, I strongly encourage it. One of my colleagues last year, my co-fellow last year, Dr. Dave Mish, did a 1-year fellowship, and I think it's a little bit different. It really depends on what you want to get out of it. For him, he wanted more experience in that education aspect and getting that practice of teaching, and a little bit of simulation education and learning how to create sim cases and run sim cases and all that stuff. And he actually managed to translate that into a pretty interesting role at Coney, where he is now their education/simulation director. So I think choosing the 1 to 2 year path, it really depends on what your life aspirations are. If you envision yourself in long-term being in leadership of any sort, or being a medical director somewhere, being an associate program director, a clerkship director, a program director, or just being core faculty with some sort of leadership role, I would strongly encourage doing the 2-year fellowship. I understand that it's a little bit de-incentivized to continue to get that fellow salary for 1 more year, but I can't understate the amount of education that I've gotten from doing the master's. And additionally, when you do a 1-year fellowship, within 2 to 3 months, you're already starting to look for jobs at your new spot. So you haven't really had a chance to make the most of your fellowship year. You haven't had a chance to create research projects. You haven't had a chance to really be good at teaching, if that was part of your big reason for doing a 1-year fellowship. So I'd encourage a 2, but there definitely are reasons to do a 1, and there definitely are ways to make it super productive.
Thank you, Sunny.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry I made you miss your call.
Okay.
Thanks for being here. And I just wanted to say, we're all here because we're trying to make some kind of a mark. But I think it's extraordinary that Sunny's been here for 1 year and he's already left such a mark and, really enhanced our program. So I think there's so much you can do in a brief amount of time. 2 years goes really fast, but yeah, you've been amazing. Thank you for coming and giving us your perspective.
Great. I'll let you free. Dr. Brady. So tell us a little bit about PEM and the decision towards PEM.
Well, I mean, obviously I'm coming at this from a different aspect because I was a peds trained person. In my 2nd year of residency, realized I wanted to do pediatric emergency medicine. This is after strongly considering emergency medicine in medical school. And initially I thought the fellowship was going to be just learning and getting comfort with procedures that we didn't get to really do in pediatric residency. But I really discovered during the fellowship that so much of it was learning how to manage multiple different patients in multiple different stages of their evaluations. And it was really the ability to, task switch very easily, And that was something that I didn't really recognize how important that was and how important that is in emergency medicine. And that's something that you'll definitely develop in your 3 years of residency or 4 years, depending on where you end up going. But I think it's something in any fellowship that you would decide to do after an emergency medicine residency, it would just give you more time to perfect that task switching and being able to manage an entire busy emergency department, because it's a really hard skill to learn, and you really need as many years as you can to learn that.
Yeah, I think I don't want to speak for everyone. I feel like you underappreciate it in residency, and then you realize how truly hard it is once you graduate. So the people who learn, who like you, who realize it earlier on, are definitely, I think, ahead of the game. I think we have Dr. LeBaron here now.
Hi guys.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about administration track?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi guys who are on the call. My name is John LeBaron. I'm the medical director for the adult emergency department here. I did residency at New York Presbyterian Queens. Loved it so much. Loved the people here that I wanted to be chief here. Dr. Yonedo was actually one of my chief residents when I was an intern, and like the job that she did was incredible and inspired me to want to give back a lot of that to the residency. I saw some things that weren't happening my second year when I was a resident, and decided that I want to be chief resident to bring back a lot of what Nao brought to my class to the classes that were going to be underneath me. And that's what pushed me to the chief year. Initially going into my third year, I was going to work in the community and going to be a community doc. But one of my mentors, Dr. Sharma, had a lot of faith in me and really felt like he saw someone with strong leadership skills. And doing the chief year kind of gave me a lot of experience working behind the scenes to make things better for not only my peers in the ED, but also for the patients that we end up seeing. And so the two of those things together, I think the other thing that you need to know about fellowships going into them is that, it's really the only time to do it is when you're graduating residency. Anybody can get a pay increase. That's not a problem. That's very easy to do. We like getting pay increases, but losing money is very difficult to adjust to. Once you become used to a certain lifestyle, it's very difficult to adjust to a lifestyle less than what you have. And you'll see once you go through residency and become an attending that the jump in income is significant. And giving that up again to have what's a little bit better than a resident salary is pretty impossible. So I figured I worked hard enough during my residency year. I did enough during my chief year that I should definitely give this a try. All the support and help that I had at NYPQ just made it a very easy process, a great place to grow and to become a better leader. Completed my admin fellowship here, just really became kind of ingrained in the idea of leadership and in administration within the emergency department, and decided to continue pursuing that career and that growth, and stayed on and became the associate director here. Continue doing projects behind the scene, looking to find other fellows or other residents to kind of groom into someone to be my replacement. Unfortunately did not materialize prior to me leaving here. I continued interviewing and actually just accepted a job as a chair at another site last week, actually. So a lot of success, a lot of hard work, but for the right person, it's absolutely the right path to pursue. And haven't looked back with any regrets since I've made that decision to pursue the fellowship in my third year.
Okay, that was great. Do we have any questions from the audience? We have like a dedicated group of students.
Hi everyone, my name's Clarence. I'm a fourth year med student from Sophie Davis out in Manhattan. Thank you all so much for your time. This was really, really cool. So I'm excited to apply for EM this upcoming season. I was wondering if we as residents, would we have the opportunity to experience more than one track or more than one of these specialty tracks?
It's a very good question. Should we let Dr. Parikh answer that? Dr. Parikh, do you want to answer that, or Dr. Yoneda? You're muted, I think.
I think other people can answer.
Sorry. So,
in the room
Clarence,
next door. Like, knock,
that's a-
knock, you're muted.
oh, I did?
No, not
Oh.
not anymore. Not anymore. You're
Oh,
good.
okay, sorry. So that's a great question, Clarence. So the answer is yes. What we typically do is when you get here as an intern, we'll wait a couple months so that you can get to know everybody and get some basic exposure to who's involved in each track. And we have 8 tracks now, and you are allowed to join more than one. But we ask that you don't go crazy and you don't spread yourself too thin. So we ask that you don't sign up for more than 3 tracks. And what you do as part of that track is really incumbent upon you. You can be very hands off and just go to the meetings and kind of just get exposure, or you could be really, really involved. That's really up to you. So yes, you can be part of more than one track. You can be up to, at any given time, you can be part of 3 tracks, up to 3 tracks. And then we let you redecide and recalibrate at the end of the year. So, you could go through all the residency and pick, 3 different tracks every year and get exposed to everything. Or you might stick with the same track all 3 years. That's really up to you. But it's a great way. And you will, at the end of the day, you will get trained in all of these things. You will get trained very well in critical care and in ultrasound and in peds and in academics, all of this stuff. But this is all additional exposure on top of that. And a lot of people will choose their tracks based on what their aspiring career goals are. And it will help them along the, later on down the line when they're applying for fellowships and that sort of thing. So I hope that answers your question, Clarence.
Gotcha. Yes, it does. Thank you, Dr. Parikh.
Any last questions? Oh, we got a question from it seems that there is an abundance of critical care experience in the 3 years of residency. Do you have any residents that went on to pursue a fellowship in critical care?
So I can speak to that as well. To my knowledge, not anybody in particular. We've actually had some attendings. We've had one attending in particular two attendings who came here. They worked here as clinical attendings for a while, and then they went on to do a fellowship, and then went back to becoming, critical care attending at another site. I'm not sure exactly the reason for that. I think one of the reasons is, number one, we don't offer a critical care fellowship here, and it's a little bit complicated because we are part Envision and part NYP. And so in order to do ICU work, which is part of your fellowship, you would have to also be hospital employed plus Envision employed, and it's a little complicated. So it's really just a logistics phenomenon. I hope to one day actually have a critical care fellowship here, because I think it would thrive here. We have definitely tons and tons of sick patients, and we're doing cutting edge stuff with critical care. But at the same token, I think a lot of residents from here don't go into critical care because they're very, very well trained in critical care by the time that they graduate. So they probably don't think that they need to do a fellowship.
I will say, Torres, I'm sorry, you can go ahead.
The one thing about critical care fellowship, you have to have a plan. Like, you want to work in some critical care. We do not have a real critical care section of the hospital that the ED runs only. We do have a resuscitation room, and then a CU for patients who are kind of pseudo sick, and there is our version of a step down unit, but it's not an official one for the rest of the hospital. There are some hospitals that you would probably be, if you did an ICU critical care fellowship, that you'd be the ideal person to be hired in that type of setting. But it's usually academic centers, like University of Michigan has their own ED ICU. So if you decide to do the 1 year track, you won't be critical care fellow eligible. And the internal medicine board allows ER doctors after 2 years of critical care to apply and to become a critical care fellow. But some of us just do 1 year because maybe we found that we were lacking in our skills, or they don't feel comfortable with certain things of resuscitation. So they do a one-year fellowship, like at Stony Brook or Hartford, Connecticut, where my colleague, my friend Michael Chuang went. So, and guess what? Just doing that 1 year will give you enough street cred for an academic center to say, hey, I actually work with critical care doctors. I spent a year with vents. You have a little bit more street cred than the guy who never did fellowship, right? I have an accumulation of 20 years of mistakes and not mistakes and being board certified. But like LeBaron said, I ain't taking no pay cut, not now. So, but for those of you guys want to, take advantage of it. All right. All right.
Okay.
Dr. Wood, you were saying?
Oh, I was going to say, I mean, to add on to that, there's a lot of like nuance of critical care, because there are 2-year programs and there are 1-year programs, and I think a lot, at least anecdotally, a lot of the residents from this program, I think, feel that they get strong critical care training and don't necessarily gravitate towards doing a 2-year critical care fellowship, because for that often means that you're going to be splitting between an ICU and an ED, and just generally speaking, a lot of people who go to 3-year programs don't envision themselves spending half of their, the rest of their training in an ICU. That said, there are always people who are different. I know people who have done 3-year programs who then do go on to split ICU, EM. I came from a 4-year program, and I think that sort of like natural tendency to want to do some ICU ED split was more like established a little bit. But then there's also these ED ICUs, and it might be something that's more encouraged in the future. We'll have to see. And I think that is an area where people who choose to do 1-year programs might especially feel like it's a nice spot for them. Any last questions? All right, thank you everyone. I really appreciated all of your input and all of your advice. Thank you guys. Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
It's fun hanging out and talking. Love you guys.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks to Intro for hosting.
Thank you.